Everyone calls it overnight success because they only noticed the night your work became impossible to ignore. They never saw the years when your effort earned no applause and offered almost no visible proof of progress. What looks sudden from the outside is usually built through thousands of ordinary choices nobody bothered to watch. This is the hidden season between starting with hope and finally becoming the person people call lucky. You watch someone break through, then wonder why your own life remains painfully unchanged after months of effort. Their highlight reaches you in seconds, while your unfinished journey begins to feel like personal failure. You start measuring your first difficult chapter against someone else's polished ending and lose faith in yourself. The hardest part is not working, but continuing without evidence that any of it will matter. No one celebrates the nights you choose discipline, while doubt keeps asking whether you are wasting your time. Eventually, silence makes real progress feel hidden, until hidden progress begins feeling exactly like defeat. Success rarely begins when the world notices, because that is simply when private work becomes public. Applause arrives late because preparation happens quietly before opportunity finally has a reason to stay. Every polished result hides clumsy attempts and rejected ideas that once seemed completely unimportant. You are seeing the harvest, not the seasons of empty fields that made the harvest possible. A breakthrough is accumulated skill meeting the moment that finally gives it somewhere visible to land. Once you understand that, slow progress stops looking like punishment and starts looking like construction. Your brain prefers quick rewards, so delayed results can make the right path feel dangerously wrong inside your mind. Social media compresses 10 difficult years into one exciting post, then lets comparison damage your patience. You chase visible milestones instead of building the hidden skills those milestones actually demand from you. Each time you switch directions too early, you abandon the compound growth that only consistency can create. You need a system that continues working when motivation disappears and emotional proof stops arriving. The fear beneath impatience is simple, because you might give everything and still remain unseen by everyone. So you protect yourself by quitting early, because unfinished effort feels safer than a completed attempt that fails. That protection carries a cost, because you never stay long enough to discover what persistence could build. Maybe your story begins after work, when you open a laptop while the rest of the city sleeps. You have an idea that matters deeply, although nobody around you understands why you keep returning to it. The first attempt is awkward, and the 10th is ignored, yet neither looks much better than the last. Still, each quiet night teaches something the previous one could never teach through theory or borrowed advice. You learn where people lose interest and how your own fear quietly weakens the work before it reaches them. Months pass, but the numbers remain small enough to make every sacrifice feel difficult to defend. Friends ask when you will try something practical, and their concern begins sounding like your private doubt. One exhausted night, you close the laptop and decide tomorrow may be the day you finally stop. The room becomes painfully quiet, and relief briefly feels easier than carrying another season of uncertainty. Then you notice the old notebook beside you, filled with lessons your earlier self had not understood. Those pages reveal undeniable proof that you changed, even when the outside world offered almost nothing in return. Your work is clearer and your judgment sharper, while failure no longer surprises you or controls your next decision. You realize the project was never standing still, because it was slowly rebuilding the person responsible for it. So you return the next evening with a smaller promise to improve one thing and finish one honest attempt. That promise survives because it asks for consistency instead of confidence or praise from anyone. Week after week, the work becomes stronger and more truthful until it barely resembles your earliest attempts. Then one ordinary morning, something reaches the right person and travels farther than you ever expected. People discover you that day, but the person they discovered was built during every night they missed. That is why the public moment feels sudden, while the private transformation feels incredibly long. Success was never overnight. People simply noticed after your ability had grown quietly through years of steady work. The result was merely the announcement, never the beginning or the full story that made it possible. Your unseen season may not be empty because it may be teaching the skills your opportunity will demand. Progress hides inside better decisions and faster recovery. Along with work, you no longer fear attempting. These gains seem small because they cannot be photographed, but they determine what happens when pressure arrives. The question is not who notices today, but whether today's work makes you harder to ignore tomorrow. Your timeline becomes less frightening when you stop demanding public evidence for every private improvement. First, replace outcome goals with a daily standard you can complete even when nobody responds. Measure what you control through focused hours and completed attempts. Then apply every useful correction honestly. Second, keep a private record because disappointment makes your memory forget how much progress already happened. Review that record monthly and compare your current decisions with the mistakes you repeated before. Third, choose one direction long enough for skill and opportunity to begin compounding together. This means improving the method before abandoning the mission rather than ignoring honest evidence. Fourth, build a schedule that survives low motivation and ordinary human exhaustion without collapsing. Make the minimum small enough to repeat, but meaningful enough to preserve your identity as someone who continues. Fifth, study another person's process instead of emotionally reacting to the result they finally revealed. Ask what they practiced and endured, then learn how long their invisible season actually lasted. Then return to your own work with one specific adjustment instead of another hour of self-judgment. Work quietly and improve with purpose, letting repetition carry you farther than brief bursts of intensity. Your goal is not certainty every night, but reliability, despite uncertainty and disappointing results. The difficult truth is that your long-awaited breakthrough may be hiding behind the season you resent most. If you leave only because progress is invisible, you may abandon the exact work that was changing everything. No one can promise when your moment will arrive, but quitting guarantees the process ends before it can. You must decide whether temporary silence deserves permanent control over the future you still want. One day, people may call you lucky, never knowing how often you continued without any reason to feel lucky. Let them misunderstand the ending because your responsibility is remaining faithful to the work that creates it. The night nobody applauds may become the night your future quietly changes direction forever. So stop asking whether success should have happened already and ask what tonight is helping you become. You are not behind because your progress remains private and difficult for other people to understand. Your task is not to force a breakthrough, but to become ready enough to sustain it when it arrives. That requires patience with the timeline and complete honesty about the quality of your daily work. Keep building until opportunity does not create your success, but finally reveals what already exists. Tonight may look ordinary, but quiet nights are where uncommon ability is patiently built piece by piece. Every useful correction and repeated habit becomes part of a future that other people will call sudden. You do not need the world to believe yet because you need another honest day of evidence for yourself. Stay long enough to meet the stronger version of you these quiet nights are already creating through repeated effort. Before this day ends, choose one small piece of work you will complete without waiting for recognition. Then write it down and return tomorrow, especially if today's effort produces nothing you can celebrate. In the comments, share the dream you keep building while most people still cannot clearly see its progress yet. If this message strengthened your patience, subscribe and continue this quiet journey with Soul's Journey Light Path.